Welcome to Her Vision, Her Voice, a show where we celebrate the bold and powerful voices of women, women of color, and women in the LGBTQ plus community who are redefining the music and film industries. I'm your host, Aline Kazarian, and in each episode we'll dive into conversations with trailblazers who have turned obstacles into opportunities, using their vision to amplify their voices and inspire change. Today I will be joined by Jordan Anderson in the second hour of the show. Jordan is the talent booker at the legendary Troubadour here in Los Angeles, where she set a new record in 2024 by booking over 300 shows in a single year. Born in Tupelo, Mississippi, and a graduate of the University of Georgia's music business program, Jordan began her career working with Widespread Panic before moving to Nashville. There, she led marketing for Marathon Music Works and Exit In, booked her first show, Rainbow Kitten Surprise, and went on to work at AEG and AC Entertainment. Since joining the Troubadour in 2021, she has booked standout performances by Chappell Roan, Counting Crows, Renee Rapp, and many more. In addition to her work at the Troubadour, Jordan manages Sparkle City Disco, a vinyl DJ collective based in Nashville. All right. If you are just tuning in, this is Her Vision, Her Voice. I am your host, Aline Kazarian. I am very happy to say that Jordan Anderson is finally joining me in the studio. Jordan, welcome. How are you?
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Hi. It's really good to have you on, Jordan. I love to start off the show usually with people talking about their origin story. You know, their time growing up, their early influences before all the fancy titles and, you know, getting a career in the music industry. What were those early influences like for you? And what would you say sort of was this, like, I don't know, maybe at the time didn't really feel like much, but later on in hindsight, you realized, oh, that was a moment that actually set me on my path to working in the music industry?
Sure. So I grew up in Tupelo, Mississippi, which is far, far away from here, but it's Elvis's birthplace. So I feel like music was always around me, and my dad was my music influence. His taste is definitely ingrained in me with the Mississippi Delta blues and jam bands and Van Morrison, Eric Clapton. That stuff is what I grew up listening to. And then I went to the University of Georgia pre-law, thought that was going to be my path, and quickly learned I actually don't like to read unless it's for fun, and discovered the music business program there and took one class my freshman year and was like, whoa, I can do this. And I'd grown up literally burning CDs like most millennials did for their friends. Yeah. I called it Tunes for Friends, which actually now I still do as a playlist, you know, almost 20 years later. And I was mailing them to my high school friends from college.
That's awesome.
And then Spotify came about when I was in college and started making that playlist. And that was kind of what was like, okay, I want to share music with people. Like, this is awesome. This is actually something I can do. I didn't even know it was a possibility. And then graduated from that program and, you know, led me here ultimately.
Did you know that you wanted to work in the live event space, or did it just sort of naturally come about being at school and then, you know, meeting people? Or
yeah, not at first, for sure. I didn't like know which route I wanted to take. I had 6 internships in college. They're really good about requiring that and making you meet people.
Yeah, that's a lot of internships. Yeah. We only had to do one at my school.
Well, it makes you network, you know. Yeah. So my last one in college was with this band called Widespread Panic, which is a Southern jam band, very big in the South, everywhere, but definitely the South. And that's actually one of the bands I grew up listening to with my dad. So that kind of was full circle with me. And their model of like pushing live, like they don't care about selling their music. They sell vinyl, of course, but like their whole model was built around selling tickets and merch. And that's like the basis of jam bands, for sure. The Grateful Dead built that model. So it was really cool to see that in action and be a part of like helping build those shows out from the ground up and seeing their team work on that. So I think that was like the first instillment of like, oh, I want to go into live. I didn't really know what aspect yet until later when I graduated and moved to Nashville. I interned for AEG. Lenore Kinder is like my big mentor. She's at Wasserman now, but she was a buyer at AEG. And seeing that office grow bands from the bottom up, whether it was like the Lumineers, Casey Musgraves, like those bands all started in that office, Mumford & Sons. So that's really what finally I was like, okay, I want to stay in live, and I think I want to be a buyer.
What were those early days like being in Nashville? Was there any sense of, I don't know, even culture shock, even though it was still in the South? Was there any difference in terms of your surroundings, the people you were meeting, how the music industry, worked there?
What's really cool is I've mostly worked with women and a lot of queer women, which is definitely not the case for most people in our industry. So I was in Nashville in an office with primarily women and primarily queer people.
That's so awesome.
So I came out in that office to those people. Those are some of the first people I came out to. So like that was inspiring for me, and to be able to like see and relate to them and grow because of them. I actually interned, then became the marketing director for 2 venues in Nashville, and came back to AEG and was their marketer under my old bosses, which was really full circle too. But yeah, I watched Nashville change during those times too. I mean, when I moved there, the focus was still primarily country, even though like there was the bubbling of the indie scene that's there. And I feel like there's so much more in Nashville now more than ever than I think most people assume. So yeah, I think that change was really cool to be a part of and see, alongside.
I think this sense of finding artists, being the first to discover an artist, is something that is really close to your heart. Mm-hmm. And I wonder if you always had that passion, or if it was something that you grew into, just being in that sort of surrounding, being, around all these different people. How would you say that developed in you? Was it a passion you just always had?
Yeah, I think going back to sharing music with friends and burning those CDs and just like getting on LimeWire or Napster and finding stuff that people were listening to. I don't even remember how you were seeing that stuff. You were looking up stuff you were hearing, but then you could also see what people were downloading, I think.
Yeah.
And I'd tap in and download them and start sharing with friends. And then my friends would come back to me and be like, this is so cool. Like, I want more. So that really triggered it for me. And then later, when I was the marketer for Marathon Music Works and Exit In, there were 2 sister venues at the time. I hadn't been buying yet. I was just marketing, and I discovered this band, Rainbow Kitten Surprise, and they were a small indie band in North Carolina. I found them on Spotify, but I saw their numbers growing, and they had never been in Nashville, and I was like, hey boss, can I have some money to book this band at Exit In, which is $500 cap? And he was like, sure, you can have $500. The band sold out. They had a whole team out of Nashville that next week. Wow. And I was like, whoa, this is awesome. Still friends with them, still super inspired by them and their story. But yeah, and they did that on their own. Mm-hmm. No label, no nothing. And it's funny how you can develop those relationships early on and like what they can lead you to, because like we were talking about a minute ago, it's like all about who you meet and then what that leads you to your next thing and what that conversation leads you to. I mean, that's totally what happened there. So it was cool to see that happen very early on.
Can you talk a little bit about what that process is like when, say, you find a band, or you were finding bands at that time, and then you would go to your boss and you'd be like, hey, these guys are really cool. Can we get them to perform here? What is that process like? Like, do you feel like you have to, in some sense, persuade the people that you're working with to get on board? And what does that look like? What are some of the inner workings?
Sure. I mean, now it's a different situation, so we'll get there. But then it was like, hey, like, look at this. Here's what they're doing. And he just trusted my gut, like I was trusting my gut, and he let me take that chance. And then I think after that, he was like, okay, you can do some more. And then I started learning to be a buyer. So, yeah, I think in how I got them, I just DM'd them. And I was like, hey, this is Jordan Anderson. I work here. I'd love to have you in Nashville. Have you ever played here? And I struck up the conversation with the manager, who's become one of my dear friends at this point. And she trusted me, and they took a chance on me like I was taking a chance on them. And, it all really worked out. And of course, that doesn't happen every time.
Right.
But like, that's how you get comfortable and learn from those conversations and taking those chances. I mean, this is all a gamble, ultimately.
Yeah, which was actually going to be my next question, which is that it feels like it is such an art where it really is you trusting your gut and believing in people, but then it might also be this massive gamble and you not really knowing what it's ultimately ultimately going to lead to if it will be a success.
Totally.
So what were some of those defining moments of success for you where you really took a chance on a band? It sounds like this band was definitely,
for sure.
Yeah. But then as you continued to grow in your career, especially at that time, what were some of those moments that made you feel like, okay, you know, this is giving me a lot of confidence. I'm feeling like this is really the right path for me. What was that?
So I continued to be a marketer when I left those venues and came back to the AEG office. I was the marketing manager for the Southeast under Lenore Kinder, who was the buyer at the time, and Allie Harnell, who's the head of the office. And I made it known when I took the marketing job, hey, like, I know this is super valuable to know, but this is what I want to do. I want to be a buyer. So they would let me be a part of conversations and listen in and then give an opinion and tell them bands to start poking on. So eventually that office kind of dissipated. Lenore became an agent at Wasserman. Allie went to become the head of Women Nation at Live Nation. And there really wasn't a spot for me to become a buyer, but I had that knowledge and had that under my belt. So I left AEG and went to AC Entertainment, which is now Live Nation, in January 2020. So the new...
Rough time.
Yeah, weird time. Little did I know. So the new Brooklyn Bowl that was opening there was going to be one of my main rooms I was buying. It was set to open the week we went into quarantine, actually.
Wow.
So no, I didn't see any of my shows played off, but some of the shows I'd booked included Caroline Polachek, which Nashville was not ready to take a chance on. And I was like, we have to do this. Y'all don't understand. This person's about to blow the fuck up.
And she did.
And she did.
Yeah.
So they let me go after that show really hard, overpay probably than at the time, maybe what they thought she was worth. She was worth it. It was going to be fine. And we did get it, but I never got to see it play off.
Damn.
But ultimately coming out of COVID and seeing what happened with her even during COVID, I was like, I mean, that's affirmation right there. Like, this was going to happen. And sure enough, they rebooked it after the fact. Saw that one come back around. But yeah, I think there's lots of those moments that happened along the way with me poking AG and like saying like, hey, watch this artist, this is about to happen. I remember going to Krung Ben at the High Watt in Nashville with my boss. It's a 200 cap, and her and I both being like, this is gonna be huge. Like, just one show, we were like, oh my god, like,
they're the coolest band.
Yeah, I mean, like, look, some of it's data driven with buying and like watching numbers, but most of it's your gut.
Yeah.
Like, going back to what we were talking about before we got on the mic with AI, like, you can't replace that.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, of course you can analyze data all day long, but like, you can't replace the gut feeling and the human aspect to that, and, you know, the subjectiveness. So I think, you know, coming into the Troubadour, this is the hot seat of that. Like, this is where you get to book huge bands that want to come do the underplay, but it's mostly, you know, the up and coming.
Yeah.
And helping them either launch their careers in some aspect or helping them, you know, get to the next step. They want to sell out the Troubadour. It's definitely a piece of their career and something they want to brag about.
Yeah,
for sure.
Of course. I mean, what, Elton John was that was his first show
1970
at
in
the
LA.
Troubadour?
Yeah. I think he did 3, maybe 5 back then.
Do you feel his presence when
well,
you
I actually
walk in
have
there?
been in his presence in there once.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He came and watched Steven Sanchez one
so
night.
sick.
And part of my job is playing host and walking in the bigger names if they're coming in the room and coordinating that. So I got to walk Elton in, which was a chilling moment. He was so sweet. Him and his husband. They came and sat in the front row of the balcony and they watched the entire show.
That's so cool.
Which was so cool.
Yeah.
You know, and at first, you know, most of those fans were like younger Gen Z kids and they didn't even notice he was there.
Oh my
but
God.
Then by the end of it, they were all turned around and they're like, holy shit, Elton John is watching Steven Sanchez. And like, that's a moment nobody will ever forget.
Right.
You know,
that must have been
incredible.
a massive pinch me moment for you.
For sure. I mean, it was like full circle. Like, he hasn't been in the room that many times. Outside of that, he did come do an Apple interview with Zayn and Brandy Carlisle when they were announcing that album. They did the interview in the Troubadour, and I came in just for the end of that. So it was cool to see both of them talking about Elton's time at the Troubadour. He always says, it felt a lot bigger back then.
Yeah.
I was like, I bet it did. A little more intimidating.
let's take just a little step back and talk about that time, that transition from, COVID and then landing this job at the Troubadour.
Sure.
What was that time feeling like? I mean, there was so much uncertainty for so many people. The entire world felt very uncertain about what was going to happen. But we were talking a little bit off air about how, the layoffs are always painful and makes you question everything about yourself. So were you feeling that? Like in that moment were you feeling?
Yeah. So, when we went into quarantine, I was still on for like 3 or 4 more months, and we just kept pushing shows. We would get on the phone every day and be like, okay, it's going to be another week. Okay, it's going to be another month. But then by that summer of 2020, they furloughed basically anyone that wasn't senior, which that was across the board with basically all promoters at that point, especially the big companies. So I was furloughed. I just hung around for a while in Nashville, met some new people, and hung with my best friend, and his wife lived next door to me, and we became the quarantined backyard hang. But when Nashville did start to open up a little sooner than everywhere else, I started booking some outdoor shows at a brewery and just tried to like reinvigorate myself to stay busy. I also started the playlist I do with my buddy Jake called Cool Stuff Music, which was just kind of like to keep our ears to the ground of like, okay, artists are still releasing music. We can't go see them right now, but like we should still stay attuned to what's coming out. So started that, and then that summer of 2021, I was negotiating to go back to my old job at Live Nation and having a couple other conversations, and I randomly got this phone call from my friend Evan. He was like, I know you got the dog and the yard and the girlfriend, but would you ever move to LA to book the Troubadour? And I was like, what are you talking about? He was like, look, like my best friend's leaving, she's been there for 5 years. It's time. And that's kind of the lifespan of the job is 3 to 5 years. And he was like, I want to throw your name in the hat. I think you make so much sense. And I was like, sure, I'll have that conversation, So I had the conversation with my boss, Christine. I actually turned it down at first because they wanted me to get here in 2 weeks. And like, I couldn't even like fathom coming out of COVID and have a great day and like getting across the country. And she called me the next day and she was like, actually, Amy's going to stay until you can come on board. We really want you here. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, like that was like, okay, this is a sign. Like, you're stupid not to do this.
I mean, the fact that they, allowed you to take the time that you needed to come out to LA totally is a sign.
Yeah. So I came and onboarded for a week with Amy, the old buyer, and then they let me work from Nashville for like a month until I could find a spot and get out here.
Was it your first time coming to LA or?
Not first, but I definitely hadn't been here more than like 2 or 3 times. Okay. And like, I didn't have like best friends out here. So it really did feel like a total reset for me. And honestly, I don't think I would be out here if COVID wouldn't happen. That's what's ironic. Like, well, that was such a horrible time. I think my life trajectory would be completely different. I think I would have bought a house and stayed in Nashville and continued on my path there, booking the South. So I have no regrets, that's for sure. And this has been absolutely amazing and incredible. So yeah, that's how it happened.
Yeah. Wow. It's just so insane because I mean the Troubadour is so goddamn iconic and you came in and set the fucking record of doing 300 shows in a year. How do you even do that?
It's a lot. Yeah, for sure.
Like
it's a lot, but that room has always been based on volume. I've definitely, no one was ever that far off from me by any means, but
you still set the record.
Yeah. No, 100%. I'm not going to discredit that. But, bringing the room out of COVID, Amy had booked some shows like through that fall in 2021. But it was like, I had to come in there and just hit the ground running and just book and book and book. So like that became ingrained in me with the room early on. And I'm a little type A. I'm not super type A, but just like being super organized and getting back to people quickly became like the game. Like you had to. And also the room is mostly incoming inquiries, not so many outgoing, but like that's my favorite part, is finding stuff and then reaching out to see if it can happen. I have a few examples of that. One of them most recently was Goldie Boudier. I found her online. I reached out. I think it was November 23. I looked back at this recently and just DM'd her, or maybe emailed the email that was like on her Instagram. And I was like, hey, like, I'm a big fan of yours. I'd love to stay in touch, and when you're ready, get you in here. She responded, and we Zoomed for like an hour and just had an amazing conversation of I don't know if you know much about her, but she was a pop act signed to a major label like 10 years ago, and it absolutely didn't work out and crushed her and put a really bad taste in her mouth for the music industry. And she was reinvigorated in COVID to start doing this like Americana pop leaning music. It's amazing. And just started putting it out, and didn't sign to a major, did it all herself, rebuilt her team, and she played the Troubadour in May and it sold out, and it was just like one of those moments that's like, this is why you do this.
Yeah,
for sure. I think another example of that was of an artist that is getting a second chance. His name is Robert Lester Folsom. He's from Georgia, but lives in Jacksonville, Florida now. He released an album in 1970 that was re-released on Mexican Summer, I think like 3 or 4 years ago. Somehow his music got put on TikTok, not by way of him, like by a fan. And the girl who's now his manager found him in a farmer's market one day and was like, "You're Robert Lester Folsom." He was like, "Yeah, he's 73 or something." They got in conversation. She realizes he's never toured before, never played that album, and that album had like pretty big success back then. And I got a cold email last fall from this girl, and it was representing him, whatever. And I was like, "Who is this? What is this artist?" Played the hit song "My Stove's on Fire." You might know it if you go back and listen to it. And I was like, I know this song. And I was like, yeah, sure. Like, I'll take a chance on this. Let's book it. I booked it the night before Coachella weekend 1. That man had never been to the state of California, had never been on a tour. We sold out the night before Coachella, and he didn't have any representation. He now has, he's represented by Wasserman. I helped him get a Newport offer after that show, because it was just like, wow, he stepped into the room and I told him it sold out, and he just started crying. And it's like, he had never been on a tour before. And it's just like those moments, you're just like, this is why we do this. Like 100%. And you want more and more of those for sure.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I'll send you the article later. Like the story behind him, like a story like that is so few and far between these days, where he barely was on social media. None of like this is what you should do was happening. It just happened naturally. And his crowd in the audience were people that were having to sit down in the pews because they were too old to stand, all the way down to 22-year-olds.
Yeah,
because it just had been reinvigorated for him again.
We'll talk about that a little bit, because in the back of my mind, as we've been having this conversation, I've been thinking a lot about and you mentioned it a little bit earlier too, but data. And signing artists based on data, or booking artists based on data and their numbers and all this shit that, like, sure, it can mean something, but ultimately they are just numbers. And I feel like the feeling that people have when they are able to watch somebody live performing or listening to their album, or, whatever the case may be, is so different. So I'm wondering what your process is like, especially now at the Troubadour, where, you're booking artists like him, but then there are other artists too who are maybe in their 20s, they're Gen Z artists, probably really utilizing social media to get their music out into the world. And I suppose I wonder what that process is like for you, as someone who, my understanding is, you absolutely just love music and you want to be able to get it out to the world as much as you possibly can. So what do numbers mean for you? What are some of the conversations you're having with your coworkers? And just what is the general vibe at the Troubadour in terms of booking artists at the venue that maybe is not so heavily influenced by just the numbers.
Sure. And don't get me wrong, it definitely also is. I think that there's just not one way. There's not just one right way. It has to work this way every time. I mean, the Robert Lester Folsom story is a prime example of how it doesn't have to work that way at all.
Yeah.
And sometimes just is trusting your gut. But sometimes trusting your gut doesn't always work. Don't get me wrong. I've been wrong. But, you know, for me, if it's a brand new up and coming artist that maybe has played just a few tours or maybe not at all, I do go look at metrics like, okay, where do we fall in their listenership in top cities on Spotify? You know, I can use roster to go see that. I pay for it. You know, that's why I pay for it. I can see where they fall. How many listeners do we have in LA? And then show data is important, is as far as like a signifier of like how this could do, right? Or if they're ready to play the Troubadour. Sometimes I tell teams or artists, hey, like, I think you're awesome. I think your artist is awesome. I think it makes sense. I don't think they're quite ready yet. I think you should go play a smaller room and circle back with me, and then let's have this conversation again. I think your goal when you come to play the Troubadour, you want to sell out or come pretty close. You don't want to play to an empty room. That's not what this is.
Yeah.
You know, we try to always, you know, get it as close to there as possible, for sure. So I definitely use it. I think show ticket sales data is probably the most important in our realm with live. You know, that's the bread and butter. You sold this amount of tickets in this size room the last time you were here, and that is totally taken into consideration. But there are plenty of times where it's like, this artist is coming from Europe, has never been to the US. We have none of that to go off of. I'll look at their streaming. I'll look at their socials. But then it's like, okay, then it's just me. Do I think that this artist sounds appropriate for the Troubadour, and are they ready? And does my internal tell me that? And that's, you know, that's a lot of it. And that's what can't be replaced.
Yeah. And
know?
you've booked shows in different cities too. So I wonder what each city's identity, scene, everything about it, like, how does that influence the way that you book shows, or does it not really influence you?
It can. You know, what's funny is one of the first things I noticed when I moved here is what does well in LA doesn't always do it well in Nashville, and vice versa, or as well. You know, like, there are artists that can play the Ryman in Nashville but can just sell out a Troubadour, and we're two very different capacities, you know. And that look, we don't want everything to be the same. That's part of what makes us human and unique. Like, people like different genres more in different regions of the country. So if we're talking about like Americana music or country, of course that's going to do better.
Yeah.
On that side of the country. Like, of course. Pop is king out here. You know, the majority of the shows at the Troubadour that sell out are Gen Z populated shows that their fans are buying tickets. And a lot of that is pop. You know, and that wasn't the case in Nashville.
Yeah.
I think that's changing. It's probably completely different even than when I left 5 years ago or 4 years ago, you know? So, which is cool to see. Like, it's always evolving. But yeah, I think I look at it a little differently, and I still pay attention to what's being done there. A lot of my friends are buyers there, and we talk all the time. I talk with buyers, honestly, across the country, and we share notes of like, look, this just popped off, you should go after it, like, or this is what this did, you know. But again, like, it doesn't work the same for all of us. It's totally dependent on your region and on your city and on your community, you know.
Yeah. Is there a city, either nationally or internationally, that you've maybe always wanted to live and work at a specific venue that has just been a dream of yours, or I don't know, just a different kind of environment that would be intriguing to you?
I don't know if I can beat booking one of the most famous clubs in the world.
Sure. I mean,
I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think I want to be in festival world and helping artists grow from venues to festival and up, you know, up the ranks on a festival. That's super intriguing to me. And then I think one day, I don't think I'll live there ever again. I would love to help with a club in my hometown.
Yeah.
In Tupelo. There's a little tiny club there called the Blue Canoe that.
What a great name.
It's awesome. It's a dive. The owner, Adam, has done a fantastic job. He had like no music background. He just trusted his gut and went for it. And I think it's like 200 cap, and he's had everyone from Alabama Shakes to Tyler Childers to Sturgill. That realm does really well there, but like jam bands, whatever, early on, Goose, I think, played there, and they remember it, and he totally champions them. And he has no skin in the game. He's in this tiny ass town in Mississippi and just does it for fun. And like, that's the watering hole there.
Yeah.
But there's no other like step up from that, like to keep growing artists there. And I think it would be really cool to have like a bigger room that could take, you know, what's in there and then grow it up a little bit. And, you know, there's not a lot to do in Tupelo, Mississippi. So I think that it would do well, honestly.
Absolutely.
I think it could, you know? So I think that might be a passion project that could happen one day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll talk about, you know, even when you think about the festival realm, I don't remember when it was, but it was definitely years ago when there was this outcry of there aren't enough women acts on any of these big lineups like Coachella or Outside Lands or any of them, right? So I'm wondering where your head's at in terms of, were you to ever work in that realm, what steps you would take personally to ensure that these artists are given more chances to perform at the highest level in front of the biggest crowds? Totally.
I think overall as an industry, we are paying more attention to that. You know, I think Book More Women, that account has really like opened up everybody's eyes like to actual data and percentages of like, okay, this is what's happening on these festivals. And, you know, I'd have to give the benefit of the doubt that I don't think that that's intentionally happening, where a lot of times it's more men than women are booked. I just think we now need to like try to intentionally make it more even and pay more attention to it. I think for me personally, as a queer person, like I intentionally pay more attention to that realm and want to bring those artists to my spaces. So I think that's what's always on my mind. Like I was lucky. I got to book Chapel early on. I got to book Renee early on. Medium Build is one of my favorite shows I've ever booked, the Troubadour. And being able to elevate those artists and then talk about them on things like this, I think that's super helpful in keeping them on the forefront for people, because a lot of times it's like, again, I don't think it's really intentional, but it's like, but if they're just as good as any of the, you know, cis popular artists are, we just need to elevate them and put them in front of people so that they're listening. And then that'll just naturally happen. Like, it's not even that we have to force anything. It's just if you elevate them naturally in spaces like this or playlists or whatever, I mean, it's just going to naturally. Right. I mean, I think we as a population have more queer popular artists than ever before in history. You know, I mean, and it's become more normalized, and I hope that it just continues to become more normalized and more normalized. When I was a kid growing up in Mississippi, I couldn't tell you if I was listening to any queer artists then. But my little cousins who are 7 and 10, they're listening to queer artists every day.
It feels like such a different world
100%
now compared to when we were kids.
Yeah. And TikTok has played a huge part in that, of course.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think accessibility has definitely played its part. I think another thing that I think too, and that I wholeheartedly believe in, is that people are a lot more open-minded and malleable and willing to give something a try. But I think there are certain obstacles that get in the way, like the media at times, that doesn't allow for those dams to break.
Yeah,
exactly.
Totally.
You know, so I think society as a whole is very much open and willing to support artists who are queer or anything other than cis or white or, you know. But it's just a matter of breaking down those barriers in the ways that you just talked about as well, where slowly but surely it just continues to add on, you know, over time. It doesn't have to be this viral sensation overnight. So I do believe that people are very much willing to and very much open-minded to all different kinds of art and music. It's just a matter of giving them the opportunity to, you know,
it's just gonna happen.
Support those artists. And then it'll just organically from there.
Which is what we want, you know. Anyway.
Exactly. I mean, that's
just a fair shot. That's really all it is.
Right. And I do believe that is the beauty of the music industry in a lot of ways. When you just look at music and you look at the artists who are making that music, and then you look at the people who end up supporting that music, that's really the heart of it all.
Yeah.
You know, take out any of the bullshit, the politics, all that stuff from the business side of things. The heart and soul of the music industry is that, is the
100%.
Artistry, you know? And you're not going to be able to have that if there is only one way or one type of thing or what you touched
just
on
listening
earlier.
to what's on the radio.
Right.
Which is basically what I grew up doing.
Me too.
I mean, as a kid until the internet came about.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what happened. You know? I only knew what was put in front of me. Mm-hmm. Just like most of us.
I will say too, I had a very similar upbringing to you where radio, like anytime I was in my parents' car, the radio was on.
Totally.
You know, that was it.
Yeah.
And then it was MTV music videos and VH1.
Yes.
It was like the weekends were just the best.
That. They
you
need
know?
to bring that back.
I know. They play classic videos, but it's not the same.
Well, they need to like push it on streaming so that millennials jump back on board and help push that, because I don't watch music videos anymore unless I intentionally go look something up.
Yeah. And the industry now doesn't necessarily appreciate music videos in the same way that they used to because of how this has panned out.
But what's so funny is that we love short clips nowadays, and that's what that is. I mean, they're short movies.
Yeah.
Right? They're mini, like, well, how we should be able to reinvigorate that. And like, I don't know, when you can watch, I guess, maybe a whole music video on TikTok, maybe that will be part of it. I don't know. Maybe you can now.
I think it might be going there. Yeah. Because after COVID, I feel, well, even when COVID happened, and especially afterwards, I feel like there was this rethinking in a lot of people about everything moving way too fucking fast and everything being so just go, and everything is just scrolling and never really sitting down to fully appreciate something for what it is. It's just everything started to feel like a distraction for so long.
Totally.
And I think now there's almost this sense of it reversing to long form content is becoming more popular. Music videos, I think, are still very important, and I think people know that they are important and still love to see their favorite artists, you know, release a new music video for a song, right? But I think it's one of those things where it's like the pendulum is just swinging, and it's kind of a slow swing back to how those things were. And I am not the type of person who's like, we need to go back to how things were, because no. But I think there are things from that time that we can bring back, that we can rethink, and that we can reshape and reform and really think about how it could actually be beneficial again, and maybe even better. You know, just do something with it that would make it better. Right.
I think that an example that comes to mind is Tyler Childers' series of videos he just released alongside his album. One of my friends, Emily Cox, is his creative director, and she helped direct and produce and put those together. But it tells a story, and it's like, if you actually can grab someone's attention to then sit down and watch those, you are going to be so impressed by that artist even more than you already are. And it's like, that's worth it. But it's just, okay, it's getting their attention to grab them, to bring them there and sit down and watch it. Right. So you're scrolling. Oh, this is cool. I'm going to click in. Yeah. And I'm actually going to give this my time. Right. And that's going to pay off.
Which is quite a challenge to achieve that nowadays, because it's just, we're so inundated with information, which I guess in some ways makes me think of even the live setting as well. As, you know, you booked 300 shows at the Troubadour, and I know you said that there were other people before you that got pretty close to that number, but I wonder how this sense of just everything moving so quickly, how that ultimately also impacts the live industry, if it does at all, or if you feel that at all.
Sure. I mean, look, you book that many shows a year. Some days it's just a job, right?
Yeah.
Like, or some days it's going to feel like just a job. But I think you got to remember, okay, but this is still so important to these people that are coming to the room that day. So that's one thing I try to remind myself, because it is so much content being fed to me just by watching shows. And I definitely am jaded, because who wouldn't be? And it's harder to maintain my attention for a full hour of a show without having to distract myself and then re-engage, like, for sure, because I'm not seeing my favorite artists every night in that room, but there are fans that are. I'm trying to rethink your question. So I guess my point is with that is, like, for artists, like, I think they have to remember that too, of like, there are people and their fans that are now able to see so many artists whenever they want. That is still so attainable. I definitely agree that concert tickets at a certain level have gotten outrageous in fees. We don't have to go into that. But on my level, on the club level, it's still pretty affordable to go see an artist. And we purposely keep it that way at the Troubadour. That's what it is. That's what, you know, my ownership wants it to always be. But I think the artist has to remember, even though they're playing 20 or 30 shows on a tour, you could be in front of your biggest fan that night, and usually you are every night. And I think that is a challenge for them because of all the content they're also consuming and the shows that they're also playing and the shows that their fans are seeing. Like, they have to make a point to make that show special too.
Can you talk a little bit about your passion and your involvement with, is it NIVA?
Yes.
So talk about that. Enlighten me, because I have no idea.
So NIVA is the National Independent Venue Association. It was formed in COVID to help save the indie space, indie venues. You know, we weren't all talking to each other before COVID. And there's probably over 2,000 indie spaces at least across the country. And as they continue to collect more and more every day, and a lot of them closed in COVID because they couldn't afford to stay open. I mean, they had no backing of someone that was going to be paying their rent and paying their electric bill when there were no shows coming through every night. That didn't just stop because, you know, just like you have to pay your rent every day, like, or every month, they also had to pay theirs, and there's no money coming in. So through some conversations with, you know, some the heads of NIVA, or the founders of NIVA, one of them being Dana Frank, who owns First Avenue, one of them being Amy, who was the old Troubadour buyer, putting their heads together, you know, NIVA was formed, and now it's a huge association. We have a conference every year, and we're all talking to each other now, and they were able to get grants from the government to help save these rooms, the Troubadour being one of them. The Troubadour started a GoFundMe in COVID, I think like 2 or 3 months in, of just like, hey, like, we can't keep this room open unless something changes, like, and we need your help.
Yeah.
So that was part of the conversation that helped start NIVA too. I feel like I'm bouncing all over the place with that.
No, this is great.
NIVA was founded. NIVA's never going away now. It's something that was always needed, but COVID definitely rushed it because those indie spaces are so important. I mean, rooms like the Troubadour and First Avenue and 930 Club and, I mean, the Georgia Theater, all these rooms that have been around for 50 plus years, some of them, are the origin stories for so many artists that you know and love. And it's like, to lose those spaces is just, it would just be horrible. So that's,
well, it would, I feel like it would be devastating to the ecosystem.
Totally. And
large.
It has. Yeah. It has, for sure. I mean, some of them have been saved, luckily. So my involvement there, the previous buyer was on the board. I helped start an initiative called the Live List, which is where all of the NIVA members across the country vote on their favorite up-and-coming artists they saw the year before. We vote at the end of the year, that are averaging like 1,500 or less tickets across the country. And then we put that list together, and we've been releasing it with Paste at the top of the year, which is this big reveal, big press moment. And then also I help book a South by showcase alongside that too. And basically that just helps elevate these up-and-coming acts that maybe you're not paying attention to, and these promoters are seeing them in their rooms firsthand, you know, as a tastemaker thing, and it only helps the overall ecosystem. So we want, artist teams, managers, labels, agents, venues, to see this list and be like, oh, I need to pay attention to this. Like these are curators that are seeing this firsthand, and they're putting their stamp of approval on it.
And I imagine it probably has brought on that level of attention from all of these different sectors of the music industry, right?
It's totally helped. I'm trying to think of some of the ones. We had Medium Build on our list. We had Dijon on our list. We had who else? We had Doechii on our list.
That's
this
awesome.
year. I mean, and to see her just blow up. I just saw her for the first time at Outside Lands last weekend, and I am simply blown away.
Yeah.
I mean, and she basically did that on her own from the ground up. I mean, now, of course, she's signed and, has all these brand deals and whatever, but like she built that herself, and that's absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, a year ago, she was touring in clubs. And now I'm sure she's going on an arena tour. I mean, yeah, she is. I think she announced it a few weeks ago. So, like, we're going to see her headlining every festival, I'm sure, next year.
I feel like that's happening more and more. And maybe it was sort of a turning point during COVID, too, for a lot of artists where they were just like, I'm going to take things into my own hands and just do this on my own.
Yeah.
Maybe it was a sense of feeling jaded. I don't know. But I do think that there has been this sort of feeling with artists of, I want to be as fully independent as I possibly can be.
As long as I can be.
As long as I can be. If somehow there is a major label deal that just is beneficial for me as an artist and will actually help my career, then absolutely, But there are things to be critical of course, with that side of the industry.
Yeah.
And speaking of being critical, something that I was thinking about when you were talking about NIVA is, outside of it essentially saving so many of these independent venues across the country, do you think putting this initiative together, that it maybe even brought up things about the live entertainment space that were things to be critical of?
100%. Yeah.
What were some of those things?
I think, so one of the things NIVA is doing is pushing a lot of the legislature around breaking up ticketing and also third-party sellers and how, there's so many of us, I mean, my parents included, and you'd think it'd only be older people who maybe don't know to recognize when they're being fed an ad on the internet, but really it's everybody. They're totally being targeted by these third parties, and a lot of times you'll search for a show on Google, right? But the first things you're seeing online are ads that are not the venue that you're supposed to be buying from. They're a third-party reseller when the show hasn't even sold out, so you don't have to go that route. And then sometimes they're fake tickets too,
right?
So that's one of the biggest things that they're combating with, which I think is huge for everyone, to be honest with you, top to bottom. I think that's helpful. It's illegal in Europe. There's a cap on resale there, which they don't have this problem that we do with resale ticketing. So I think that's huge. And they've just become the voice, of these indie rooms that we didn't have before, that we can all collaborate with and speak to. And then, they can speak for us in turn, which is huge. Mm-hmm. Sorry, remind me of what your original question was.
It was mostly just the things that we, or that you rather,
that
and NIVA is allowing to come to light outside of just saving these venues. Yeah. Is what are some of these things that we need to be critical?
I think the biggest takeaway to like put it all together is there is now this massive voice of representation for the indie spaces that was not there before, because I think they were having to individually represent themselves before. And really, like, let's be honest, like our full-time scene at the Troubadour is 5 people. We don't have time to, of course we have all these things we care about and would like to change, but like we don't have time to go speak up for ourselves or go to the community meetings or, the town halls or whatever, or write into our representation all the time, about changes we need. So having this voice that we can go to and meet with once a year and talk to whenever we need to represent us is so huge. Yeah. Like that means that that's changed the game.
Yeah.
1,000%.
I'm also curious to know about the vinyl disco DJs that you manage.
This is my fun side project. It's all of our fun side project, to be honest.
Sparkle City Disco, correct?
Yes.
So talk about what that, especially being so close to the artist side, how that maybe influences the way you even book shows, if it has any sort of influence, or just what that is like for you. Because you're saying it's a fun thing for you, but I wonder if it does also, or it has allowed you to learn certain aspects of the industry that, maybe you wouldn't have learned if you didn't start doing this.
So it's pretty DIY. Myself and Adrienne Irvin manage them. She's an AG buyer in Nashville. And then the two guys, Jonas and David, they're all in Nashville. And yeah, like I said, it's everybody's side project. So what's nice is no one's totally depending on it, but it's fun and it is successful. I think the biggest thing that I've learned from it is going back to like a DIY mindset, because they are totally DIY and they do it for fun. We're currently working on their mini festival that hasn't happened since before COVID, called Sparkle City Riverdance. So we're like deep in the trenches with sponsorship and like building out the infrastructure and getting the permitting and, making sure we have volunteers, to help. And it's only like 250 people. It's so small, but like it's a community. Mm-hmm. And at the basis of all of this, that's why we do it. And I think that's the biggest thing for me and why I do it is it reminds me of like that community and that spark that got you into this in the first place. Like that still exists with them. And that's what they always want to be. Their point is not to be this huge touring act. That's like, they play Bonnaroo. They do really well in Nashville. We've played like the hi-fi clubs, James Murphy's Club in New York, and they've done a couple out here. And they've made some money, but it's not like this like machine that we're trying to grow and like develop and like focus. They do produce a little bit of music, but mostly it's about the party and the community. And that's how it started. They've been doing it for 13 years. And Adrienne and I just got involved in COVID after we helped them throw their first party secretly in COVID when everybody was itching to do something, and it sold out. And we had some celebrities show up in Nashville and they're like, you guys killed helping us do this. Will you help us continue on? And then we ended up selling out the Brooklyn Bowl a couple times, which is the most tickets they had ever sold there, and just reinvigorating that. But yeah, it's really just, it feels good. Yeah. And it's fun and it is successful. But yeah, it's the biggest thing is it reminds me of that. Mm-hmm. It's not like some number being held over my head or
totally it feels like the pressure's off. You can just have fun with it with the people that you enjoy having fun with, and that's it. Like it doesn't have to be that's the thing that I find funny about the music industry especially is like everything is taken so seriously and everything has to be delivered yesterday.
Yes, exactly. And we're always in a rush all the time.
And look, I deeply believe in the power of art and music, but we're not doctors. We're not doing any sort of like insane, we're not inventing things that are truly saving people's lives.
But our jobs, they sure like
make us feel like we
have
are.
The anxiety that they do.
Yeah, which is wild. So it must be so refreshing to have that in your life.
Well, and my type A-ness will come out with them sometimes. I'm like, guys, we need to do this, this, and this. And they're like, okay, like we'll do it. They're just so nice.
So
and I'm
chill.
like, oh yeah, like y'all don't work like this,
right?
Like, oh yeah, like this is okay. Like you can, this is okay. This is, you can be like this. You don't need to do what I'm doing. Like,
well, I feel like this kind of perfectly segues into the last couple of questions of our conversation. The first being something that you may have unlearned within the last year that has made you reframe how you go about your life in general and how it impacts your career as well and the choices that you make. Is there something like that for you?
Yeah, I think going back to what we just said with not like having this anxiety over your head and putting that on other people, we all really unlearned that in COVID, and thank God. And it was a really nice break. While it did suck, one, I wouldn't be here if that happened, but two, taking that break was so refreshing, and to remember, I can take a break and sit back and like not rush everything. So, and have more empathy for people for the same reason and not do that to them. So like I try to remind myself of that constantly. And that you don't have to grind all the fucking time.
Right.
You know, like, oh my gosh, I saw a quote the other day, and I know this is so cliche.
Please share.
I got to remember it. But it was something like, you don't have to overwork yourself to prove that you care. You know, and that was super refreshing. And I'm like, yeah, that's exactly right. Like, I care just as much if I'm not, you know, getting 5 hours of sleep and waking up and jumping on the computer immediately. Like, it's okay to go walk around outside and not
There's so
even
much
open
more to
it
life.
First. Yeah. Yeah, like it's going to be okay.
Totally.
But look, I think any of us that are in the creative space, we care so much. And having that work-life balance is so important. And I think COVID did remind all of us of that. But I do feel like it's shifted back to how it was. And
I agree.
We got to roll that back a little bit again.
Yeah. The forcing people to go back into the office
like, is
every
everything
day
a fire drill? It's not.
Right.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's so not. Or just selling tickets.
Yeah.
That's what I'm doing.
Or anything else that people are doing in the industry. It really is just that. It's nothing that important. It is, but it not to the degree that we have for some reason made it out to be. You know?
100%. But that takes a big effort from the whole community.
Yeah.
And having empathy with everyone and being like cognizant of like, hey, you can get to this when you want to, but you know, and saying those words too and not putting the pressure on like that when it's not needed. Yeah.
Okay. So last question is a lot about legacy. And when you think about your own legacy and you think about, you know, how people will ultimately remember you, how do you want people to remember you? Both in just the work you've done, but also in terms of the impact you've had on the industry.
Sure. I think the biggest thing I always want to leave is passion and knowing that this was never just a job for me and how could it be? While we do need the healthy balance that we were just talking about 100%, like I think you and I were talking about this before we got on the mic too, of just like, this could never just be a job for all of us. We don't do a 9 to 5 where we clock out and put it away. It's always in our lives. And I love that. I'm so glad that I found this and I have a passion for what I do and it makes me money. Like that's incredible. I have lots of friends. Yeah. Who do not have that. And they ask me about it and they're jealous of it and they're like inspired by it. So I think I never want to become so jaded where I lose that. Because otherwise, what's the point of this?
Yeah. Agreed.
For sure.
I feel the same exact way. I'd mentioned when we were off air about not having a plan B.
Yeah.
And you strike me as someone who is not,
I do not
have who's not had a plan
my
B.
My family was in the furniture industry, and my dad would have totally handed that off to me if I wanted it, but he knew I never wanted it.
But I hope that they were supportive and are supportive of what you're doing.
He comes to more shows than anybody else in my family. Yeah.
I love it.
His question to me on most phone calls is, okay, so what are we going to next?
That's so sick.
Yeah,
That's
totally.
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Jordan, it was an absolute pleasure having you on the show.
Thanks for
Thank
having
you
me.
so much for just being so open and honest about your work and the type of person you are and just letting it all out. Really, really appreciate it.
Of course. This was awesome. Thanks for having me.
All right. That does it for this month's episode of Her Vision, Her Voice. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I will be back for another episode on September 20th. You can find the entire set list from the first hour of the show on the Dublab website when it is archived early next week. I am Aline Kazarian, and this is Her Vision, Her Voice. Stay tuned for Beats of All Nations and more Dublab programming coming up. Have a great weekend, everyone.